Welcome back to World Coins Explorer. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at a coin that may appear ordinary at first glance, but its history, rarity, and potential market value could surprise even experienced collectors. So before you consider it just another common coin, take a closer look, because in the world of coin collecting, even a small detail can make a huge difference in a coin's value.
Stop scrolling for a moment, because that old 1979 Susan B. Anthony $1 sitting in your collection could be more interesting than you think. At first glance, this coin may look like an ordinary $1 coin from the late 1970s. But 1979 was the very first year this unusual small-sized dollar entered American circulation, and that makes it an important piece of modern U.S. coin history. The biggest surprise is that not every 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar is worth the same amount. Some examples are common, while specific varieties, proof coins, and exceptionally high-grade specimens can bring much stronger prices. There is even a famous 1979 variety where the position of the date near the rim can make a major difference to collectors. And on certain 1979 proof coins, the shape of the tiny S mint mark can identify a much more desirable variety. So before you spend, sell, clean, or throw away your $1,979, take a close look at what you actually have. Welcome back to Coins Explorer, where today we are going deep into the history, design, varieties, mint marks, errors, condition, and real collector value of the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what details to check and why some $1,979 are far more interesting than others. The 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar was one of the most unusual new American coins of its era. It was introduced as a smaller dollar intended to be more convenient than the large Eisenhower dollar that came before it. The coin measures approximately 26.50 millimeters in diameter and weighs about 8.10 grams. Its composition is copper-nickel clad, with 75% copper and 25% nickel over a pure copper center. The edge is reeded, giving the coin the familiar ridged edge found on many U.S. coins. Frank Gasparo designed the coin, and his work placed Susan B. Anthony on the obverse. Anthony was a major figure in the American women's suffrage movement and became the first non-mythical woman featured on a circulating U.S. coin. The reverse features the Apollo 11-inspired eagle design associated with the Eisenhower dollar, showing an eagle landing on the moon. The combination of a historical woman on the obverse and the space-age reverse made the coin quite distinctive. However, its small size caused confusion with quarters, which became one of the major reasons the coin failed to achieve the popularity the mint had hoped for. The choice of Susan B. Anthony was historically significant because the United States had rarely placed real women on circulating coins. The original concept was not necessarily centered on Anthony from the beginning. According to PCGS, Treasury officials had considered an allegorical liberty design before the Susan B. Anthony concept gained strong political and public support. Representative Mary Rose Okar played an important role in pushing for Anthony's likeness on the dollar. Support also came from several women's organizations that believed Anthony deserved recognition on American coinage. Frank Gasparo eventually supported the change and developed the design that became the Susan B. Anthony dollar. Interestingly, the portrait was intentionally made more realistic rather than giving Anthony an idealized appearance. The result was a coin that looked very different from many earlier American portraits. This historical background adds another layer of importance to the $1,979 beyond its face value. For collectors today, the coin represents not only a denomination but also an important moment in the history of women and American coinage. One of the first things you should check on a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar is the mint mark. The 1979 Philadelphia issue carries a P, the Denver issue carries a D, and San Francisco produced the proof versions with an S. The United States Mint notes that the Susan B. Anthony dollar was the coin on which the Philadelphia P mint mark returned to circulating U.S. coinage. The regular 1979 dollar had an enormous mintage of 360,222,000 coins, so ordinary circulated examples are generally not rare. Denver also produced regular circulation strikes, while San Francisco was responsible for proof production. This distinction is extremely important because collectors evaluate the different mint issues separately. A normal 1979 found in everyday condition should not automatically be considered a rare coin. However, the Philadelphia issue has a major variety that collectors specifically look for, the wide rim, also known as the near-date variety. San Francisco adds another fascinating chapter because the 1979's proof dollars exist in two major mintmark types. Therefore, the mintmark can be the beginning of your investigation rather than simply a tiny letter on the coin. Now we come to one of the most important details on the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, the wide rim variety. The regular 1979 dollar has what collectors commonly call the narrow rim or far date appearance. On that version, there is a noticeable amount of space between the date and the rim of the coin. The wide rim variety is different because the date sits much closer to the rim. This is why collectors also call it the near-date variety. The rim itself appears thicker and more rounded compared with the standard narrow rim design. This variety can carry a significant premium compared with an ordinary 1979 dollar, especially in higher grades. Current PCGS price guide data shows substantially stronger values for the wide rim and high mint state grades than for the regular 1979 issue. For example, the current guide lists the 1979 wide rim at much higher levels in MS65 through MS68 than ordinary circulated examples. So if you own a 1979 do not simply look at the date and stop there. Carefully examine the distance between the date and the rim before deciding what your coin is worth. The 1979's Susan B. Anthony dollar is where the story becomes even more interesting. San Francisco produced proof versions of the coin, and collectors recognize two major 1979's proof varieties. They are generally known as Type 1 and Type 2, and the difference is found in the S mint mark. On the Type 1 proof, the S can appear somewhat blob-like and less clearly defined. The Type 2 version has a more clearly formed S, making the mint mark easier to distinguish. PCGS explains that the Type 1 and Type 2 varieties resulted from different mintmark punches used during 1979. The Type 1 production is believed to have occurred earlier in the year, while the Type 2 punch was used later. PCGS estimates that roughly 80 to 85% of the 1979 proof production may have been Type 1, leaving a much smaller share for Type 2. That makes the 1979's Type 2 proof particularly interesting to collectors. If your $1,979 has an S mint mark and looks like a proof with mirrored fields and frosted design elements, you should examine that tiny mint mark very carefully. Now let's talk about the question everyone wants answered. How much is a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar actually worth? The honest answer is that most ordinary circulated examples are not worth millions of dollars. A normal circulated $1,979 can often trade for only a small amount above its $1 face value, depending on its exact issue and condition. However, certain varieties and very high-grade certified examples can be considerably more valuable. For example, current PCGS price guide figures show the ordinary 1979 climbing substantially in value at extremely high mint state grades. The 1979 wide rim has an even stronger premium, with PCGS listing significantly higher guide values in MS65 through MS68. PCGS also lists high-grade examples of other 1,979 issues at premiums that can reach hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on grade and variety. Auction records can be even higher for exceptional coins, but an auction record should never be treated as the normal value of every coin of that type. The actual value of your coin depends heavily on mint mark, variety, grade, IAPL, certification, and current collector demand. So if you see a sensational online claim that every $1,979 is worth millions, be extremely careful and verify the exact variety and condition before believing it. Condition is one of the most important factors in determining the real market value of a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar. A coin that has been heavily circulated can show scratches, contact marks, dull surfaces, discoloration, and wear on the highest points of the design. A coin that never entered circulation may qualify for a mint state grade if it has the appropriate characteristics. But even among uncirculated coins, the difference between grades can be enormous. PCGS price guide data demonstrates this clearly because values can rise sharply as a coin moves into higher mint state grades. For the 1979p issue, PCGS currently lists much higher figures at MS67 and MS68 than at lower mint state levels. That means a coin that looks almost perfect to the naked eye may still need professional examination to determine its actual grade. Collectors also pay attention to luster, strike quality, surface marks, toning, and overall eye appeal. Most importantly, you should never clean an old coin in an attempt to make it look newer because cleaning can damage the original surfaces and reduce collector appeal. If you believe your coin is a rare variety in exceptional condition, professional authentication and grading can make sense before making a major selling decision. Another reason 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollars attract attention is the number of varieties associated with the series. But it is important to understand the difference between a recognized variety and a random damaged coin. The wide rim 1979p is a recognized major variety, while the 1979s Type 1 and Type 2 proofs are also recognized varieties. A coin with scratches, dents, discoloration, or damage from circulation is not automatically a mint error. True mint errors occur during the manufacturing process and generally require careful examination to authenticate. If you discover something unusual, photograph both sides of the coin and examine the edge under good lighting. Check the date, mint mark, rim, lettering, surfaces, and overall strike quality. Do not rely solely on a social media post claiming that a certain mark makes your coin extremely valuable. Compare your coin with reliable references and, for valuable possibilities, seek an established grading or authentication service. The most exciting discoveries are the ones that can be supported by recognized numismatic evidence rather than simply by an internet price claim. If you have a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar in your collection, the first step is simple: identify the mint mark. Next, determine whether the coin is a regular circulation strike or a proof. Then examine the date and rim relationship to see whether you may have the 1979 P wide rim variety. If the coin carries an S mint mark and has proof characteristics, inspect the shape of the S carefully for the Type 1 or Type 2 variety. Use a magnifying glass or a good quality phone camera, but avoid touching the coin's surfaces unnecessarily. Hold the coin by its edges so oils from your fingers do not transfer onto the surfaces. Never polish, scrub, chemically clean, or otherwise alter the coin before getting an opinion on its value. If the coin appears unusually sharp, attractive, or potentially rare, compare it against trusted numismatic references. For a potentially high-value coin, professional grading can help establish authenticity, condition, and market identity. And remember, the goal is not simply to find a high dollar number online. The goal is to identify exactly which 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar you own. Even if your 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar turns out to be a common example, it is still an important piece of American history. The coin marked a major change in the appearance and size of the U.S. dollar denomination. It also commemorated Susan B. Anthony, whose role in the women's suffrage movement made her an important figure in American history. The coin's design connected social history with the modern space age through its reverse imagery. The mint hoped the smaller dollar would be practical and widely used. Unfortunately, the coin's similarity in size to the quarter created confusion for many Americans. This problem contributed to weak public acceptance and limited enthusiasm for the denomination. The The Susan B. Anthony dollar therefore became an interesting example of how even technically successful coin designs can fail to meet public expectations. For collectors, that unusual history makes the series much more than just another dollar coin. And because 1979 was the first year of the series, the date remains especially important to anyone building a complete Susan B. Anthony dollar collection. So, what should you do if you find a 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar today? First, do not assume it is either worthless or automatically worth a fortune. Identify the mint mark, check the condition, and carefully inspect the variety. For a 1979p, pay special attention to the wide rim or near-date variety because it can carry a meaningful premium. For a 1979s proof, carefully examine the S mint mark to determine whether it is Type 1 or the scarcer Type 2 variety. Remember that extremely high grades can dramatically change the value of otherwise common coins. Current PCGS information confirms that the market can range from modest values for ordinary pieces to much stronger prices for scarce varieties and exceptional grades. But the most important lesson is that online headlines should never replace proper identification and professional evidence. If your coin has unusual characteristics, preserve it exactly as you found it and consider professional evaluation rather than cleaning or altering it. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the 1979 Susan B. Anthony dollar, stay connected with Coins Explorer because the next old coin you find could have a story, and sometimes a variety, that is much more interesting than its face value suggests.